Hey, welcome to lesson 2.7, completing the square. Today we're going to be learning about how to complete the square, which is a way to solve quadratic equations. And a quadratic is anything with an x squared in it. But before we get into that, we need to learn how to do some basic equations where x squared equals a number. All right? And let's review that for a second. The way you solve these is very simple. If you have an x squared and you want to solve for it, you just take the square root. All right? So when you take the square root, you'll just get x is equal to the square root of the number. Now, an important thing that most people forget here is that it has to actually be the positive or negative square root. The reason for this is, well, give me a second, the square root of 4. Let's take the square root of 4, and we get 2. Square root of 4 is 2. Now, the reason it can be positive or negative is because it could be either positive 2 or negative 2. Those are your two possible answers. The reason it could be negative 2 is, look, I could take 2 and square it, I get 4. But I could also take negative 2. Negative 2 squared is also 4. So it could be the positive or negative version. So you always have to have this sign here. So let's try another one. All right? You want to take the square root of 9. That's how you do this. So you get x is equal to the positive or negative square root of 9. All right. Now the square root of 9, that's a whole number, so it's just positive or negative 3. So you have two solutions, which are x1, which is x equals positive 3, and x2, which is x equals negative 3. And once again, that makes sense because negative 3 squared is also equal to 9. Negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. So those are our two solutions. Let's try our last one. Once again, we're going to take the square root, and we get x is equal to the positive or negative square root of 5. Now, the interesting thing here is that there is no square root of 5. I mean, there is, but it's a decimal. So all you do is you just leave it as this. So our two solutions are going to be x is equal to the square root of 5, and x is equal to the negative square root of 5. Now, you might be wondering why I'm putting this 1 and 2 here. That means x1 means the first solution, x2 means the second solution. So this, you don't have to do anything. If it's a decimal and you can't get a whole number, just leave it as the square root. All right. Let's try a little more complicated ones. We're going to solve these radicals. Now what you do here is you have x plus 3 in parentheses squared equals 4. What we're going to do is, once again, take the square root of the whole thing. All right. And when we do that, this cancels out. So we just get x plus 3 is equal to the positive or negative square root of 4. Okay? This just cancels out each other. Well, now it's going to be x plus 3 is equal to positive or negative square root of 4 is 2. And now we have two solutions. All right? This is where you got to split it. All right? It could be x plus 3 is equal to positive 2, or x plus 3 is equal to negative 2. That's the positive or negative, what you have to do here. You've got to split it. Now what we're going to do, we're not done. We have to solve for x. So let's subtract 3 from both sides on this one, and we get x is equal to negative 1. That's one solution. And we also do that on this side. We're going to subtract 3 from both sides, and we get x is equal to negative 2 minus 3 is negative 5. So your two solutions here are x equals 1, negative 1, and x equals negative 5. Let's try it again. We're going to take the square root of both sides, and we get x minus 1 is equal to the positive or negative square root of 9. Let's see, x minus 1 is equal to, well, the square root of 9 is 3. Now that we got to this step, let's split it. There's two possible solutions. It's x minus 1 is equal to positive 3, x minus 1 is equal to negative 3. And we just add 1, and we get x is equal to 4, add 1, we get x is equal to negative 2. So those are our two solutions here, 4 and negative 2. All right, we'll try our last one now. Take the square root, and we get x minus 1 is equal to the positive or negative square root of 8. You'll put this in your calculator, square root of 8. It actually is a decimal, so we're just going to leave it like that. So it's just x minus 1 is equal to the positive or negative square root of 8. You can't change anything here. but you still split it. Okay? So you get x minus 1 is equal to square root of 8, and that's your first one. And you get x minus 1 is equal to negative square root 8. Man, I ran out of space. Here, let me make some more space. Just get this out of here. I'm going to write that out one more time. I'm sorry about that. So it's x minus 1 is equal to square root of 8, and x minus 1 is equal to the negative square root of 8. We're just going to solve like we did before. We're going to add 1 to both sides. When you add 1, you get x is equal to, well, these can't be added. They're not like terms. 1 and square root of 8, you can't add them to each other. So it's actually just going to be square root 8 plus 1. Same thing with this one. We're going to add 1 to both sides. Since you can't add it to each other, it's just negative square root 8 plus 1. And that is how you solve radicals. All right, pause the video. Make sure you understand everything before moving on to the next one. Okay, so for the next part of the video, this is called completing the square. All right, and what we have is x squared plus 10x plus 16 equals 0. Now we know this is a quadratic because it has an x squared. So if you ever have an x squared and 3 terms like this, you can use completing the square. All right, every single time when you have that x squared. So how do you do it? Well, all the steps are listed here. You're going to follow along. I'll tell you what you don't do. You don't just take the square root of both sides. You cannot do it that way. All right, it just doesn't work. You have to follow these steps to solve it when it's in this form, when it's a trinomial, 1, 2, 3. First thing you do, you're going to move any term without an x to the other side of the equation. So we drop a line down. Anything without an x, such as 16, has to go to the other side. All right? So we do that. We're going to subtract 16 from both sides. And when we do that, we get, that cancels, x squared plus 10x. Now, what I want you to do is leave a space there, which equals negative 16. And I also want you to do this, plus a space. I want you to leave a space there when you do this. All right, that's step 1. Check. We subtracted 16 from both sides. Step 2, you divide the number in front of x by 2 and square it. So that number is this. That's the number in front of x. It's a 10. So we're going to take 10, all right, we're going to divide it by 2, which gives us 5, and then you're going to square it. So take the number in front of x, divide it by 2, and square it, and that gives you 25. You then add that to both sides. All right, a lot just happened there, so make sure you understand that. You take the number in front of x, which is 10, divide it by 2, which is 5, and square whatever that number is, which is 25, and then add it to both sides. All right, pay attention, keep going here. Now what we do, we're going to factor this left side. And when you factor it, what it is whatever this number is divided by 2, it'll just be x plus whatever this number is divided by 2. All right, so if this is 10, it's going to be x plus 5 squared, which equals, and then you add these two numbers together and you get 9. All right, so I just want to put that note over here. What you do is just 10 divided by 2, which is 5, and that's how we got x plus 5. All right. Next step. This looks exactly like what we just did, so you should know what to do now. We take the square root of both sides, all right? We take the square root of both sides, and we get x plus 5 equals the positive or negative square root of 9. Now the final step is just to solve for x. This is exactly, we know once you get through these initial steps, you know exactly how to solve it from here. This is just the first part of the lesson. So we're going to subtract 5 from both sides, and you get x. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a step. This is when you split the equation into 2. Actually, you get x plus 5 is equal to the positive or negative, the square root of 9 is 3. We split into 2 sides now. It's x plus 5 equals 3, and x plus 5 equals negative 3. Let's solve both of these by subtracting 5, and we get x is equal to negative 2. I'll try this now. And we get x is equal to negative 8. And that is how it is done. So I know that's confusing, so I'm going to do one more example with you. If you feel confident, do the next one by yourself. Just pause the video, solve it, see if you were right by checking at the end of the video. If not, we'll do it together. All right? So the first thing to do, we're going to move any term without an x to the other side. So let's drop a line down it, and we're going to add 9 to both sides because 9 doesn't have an x. All right? And we get x squared plus, hold on one sec, this line's a little too long, plus 4x plus, remember you leave your space here, equals 9. We added 9 to both sides. Okay? Don't forget to leave your spaces. We take our term in front of x, divide it by 2, and square it. So our term in front of x is 4. So it's 4 divided by 2, which is 2. And then we square it, which is 4 again. So we add that to both sides. Don't forget this. Just got to follow step by step. So now we get x squared plus 4x plus 4 is equal to 13. We're going to factor the left side now. So if you remember, you just take whatever this is, you take and divide it by 2. So we're going to divide 4 by 2, and we get 2. So that just means that this is x plus 2 in parentheses squared is equal to 13. And now you should know how to solve this. Square root both sides, and we get x plus 2 is equal to the positive or negative square root of 13. Now if you put the square root of 13 in the calculator, you'll see that there's no answer. All right, there's just a decimal. So we're going to split this now, and we get x plus 2 is equal to the square root of 13, and x plus 2 is equal to the square root of negative 13. Okay? Solve both of these, subtract 2 from both sides, and then you get x is equal to the square root of 13 minus 2, and you're going to subtract 2 here, and you get x equals negative square root of 13. Why did I write 12 there? Minus 2. And that's your answer. Another way to write this, by the way, is you subtract 2 from both sides. Oh, okay, you're good. All right, guys, that's it for this lesson. You're doing great. Don't kiss your mother when you get home and tell her you love her, because she cares about you. Trust me, she does.